Lisa Kudrow mere minutes from getting fired. Jennifer Aniston nearly walked off the show, and David Schwimmer said that starring in Friends was really terrifying. Hi, I'm Peter, and we're taking you beyond the headlines and tabloid cliches to explore the stories behind the scenes of Friends. Sometimes funny, occasionally scary, but all filled with drama. If you thought Lisa Kudrow was the perfect fit for Phoebe and couldn't imagine anyone else as the freewheeling, free-spirited friend, then here's a story that might surprise you. It turns out that Lisa had to go through some pretty traumatic experiences in order to be finally picked for the role. Kudrow's career had kind of a rough start, but with all the minor walk-on parts, a continual lack of money, and failed project after failed project. And then she finally got cast on a guaranteed smash hit sitcom full of fancy apartments, socializing in cafe shops, beginning with an F. Can you guess which show I'm talking about? Frasier. It was a dream come true, but after only 2 days of rehearsal, Kudrow was fired from a show that everyone correctly predicted would be a hit. Her audition was perfect, but when it came time for the rehearsals, the directors of Frasier realized that their choice was wrong, and that Lisa wasn't quite the right fit for the part. So they gave the role to actress Peri Gilpin instead. To come so close and yet still lose out on the role of a lifetime was absolutely devastating and was a big blow to Kudrow's self-esteem. After that harrowing experience, when Lisa got her second chance, her first week working on Friends was terrifying for the actress. She was convinced that at any moment, without warning, a director or a showrunner would tell her that she was fired. What made it even worse is that her character didn't really seem like a natural fit with the rest of the friends on the show. Wildcard Phoebe was so out of this world that the showrunners were constantly asking themselves, and Kudrow too, how do we convince the audience that she belongs to this group? It was definitely a problem, and it came to the point where the director, who was trying to find a creative way to present Phoebe's character, spontaneously asked Lisa to deliver her lines while sitting under a table. So she scrambled under the table and said her lines without seeing the rest of the gang, who were sitting far away on the couch. Far from feeling creative, the whole experience was horrible and the scene completely fell apart. That was when Lisa became convinced that this was the end, and this time she'd be fired for sure.
And I really was expecting to be fired that night, and I wasn't. And instead, I got to sit up with the other people, and that was good. Oof.
Little did she know, though, that the showrunners were in fact fascinated by her and the way she portrayed Phoebe, even going so far as to bump up her character from a secondary part to a main role. Yep, initially there were only meant to be 4 leading friends, with Phoebe and Chandler tacked on at the last minute. But how could the showrunners resist all that charisma? So Marta Kaufman and David Crane put all of their efforts into giving all 6 friends leading roles. Once Kudrow accepted the fact that she was really one of the chosen ones and that there were no nasty surprises waiting for her, things started to get a bit better. Well, except for her struggles with the guitar. And while fans love to associate Phoebe with her iconic song Smelly Cat, the actress revealed that she loathed playing the instrument. I didn't like the guitar, I wasn't getting it, so I think I even asked, but what if she plays the bongos, Kudrow confessed. The producers had to bring in a professional guitar teacher to try and convince her to nail the role, even if the part didn't exactly call for perfection. Perhaps that's where she learned those unique chords, bear claw, turkey leg, and the old lady. Speaking of music, let's move on to another actor who found his own sound on the set of Friends. Unlike Lisa, David Schwimmer had no doubts about his suitability for the role. He didn't even have to audition, as the character of Ross was created specifically with Schwimmer in mind. But there was one problem. David didn't want to do the show. Actually, it was far worse than that somehow. He didn't want to be on TV at all. Instead, Schwimmer wanted to focus more on treading the boards with his theatre company, and agreed to join Friends only when he found out it would be an ensemble series without one specific star. That seemed closer to a theatrical troupe format, which made the thespian a lot more comfortable. But boy oh boy did he change his mind when the showrunners forced him to work with a monkey. I'm sure you remember Ross's curious pal Marcel, played oddly enough by a female monkey named Katie in real life. But what you might not know is how much she made the cast and crew suffer, especially Schwimmer. Once the entire shooting process fell apart because Katie/Marcel decided to climb up to the ceiling and got really close to the lighting rig. The ceiling was like 60 feet high, and once Katie jumped up there, she practically disappeared in the blackness of the stage. So the crew spent half an hour trying to catch her by tempting her down with her favorite snack, mealworms. Another unusual thing that bothered Schwimmer throughout Friends was the fame. He hated it. David confessed that working on the show was actually really terrifying at times. The attention was so overwhelming that he just couldn't keep up, and it soon affected his relationships with other people, so much so that it actually took him many years to adjust and become comfortable with it. And if there's one friend who suffered from being in the public eye more than anyone else, and was always the subject of some outrageous tabloid rumor or another, and who spent much of her life dodging the paparazzi, you have to admit that Jennifer Aniston had it worse than most. There was so much that was going on in her life that she almost refused to come back for the 10th season. This was partially down to her busy career, and also probably due to her complicated marriage with Brad Pitt at the time. Aniston later revealed that she was debating about not coming back at all because of all the issues that she was working through. I wanted it to end when people still loved us and we were on a high, and then I was also feeling like, how much more of Rachel do I have in me? Thankfully for the fans, the producers persuaded Aniston to come back by cutting the season short. Earlier than this, Jennifer was also the subject of a huge controversy involving her mother during the show's 6th season. The relationship between the mother and daughter deteriorated when her mother Nancy Dow published a memoir from mother and daughter to friends without Aniston's permission. And according to the description of the book, it was meant to be an example of how to cope with and understand estrangement between a parent and a child. Not only did Aniston strongly disagree with her mother's perspective, it also ended up being a total media disaster that opened up all her childhood trauma to the public. Nancy passed away without ever fixing her relationship with Jen, and to make matters worse, it turns out that Dow actually cut Jennifer out of the family will. However, despite their strained relationship, Jen was still gracious enough to pay almost all of Nancy's bills into her final years, demonstrating a real strength of character and personal integrity. Meanwhile, Matthew Perry was battling his own demons during tough years of substance dependency. It's no surprise to anyone these days, this tragic story was unfortunately spread far and wide. Because of his struggles with pills and alcohol, Matthew Perry has admitted that he can't remember shooting 3 whole seasons of Friends, made all the more sad as these scenes were basically the most romantic part of Chandler's relationship with Monica. Perry revealed to The Hollywood Reporter that he was in and out of rehab secretly, not once but twice during his 10 seasons on the show. But despite his best efforts, eventually the news of his struggles got out. I'm a pretty private person, but I was on a TV show that 30 million people were watching, so people knew. It was so public what was happening to me. Thanks to a lot of support and some careful recovery, Matthew's been sober now for more than 15 years, and he uses his experience to help others who are also in recovery. But sometimes, Matthew's vices have helped him out while filming. Of course, I'm not talking about drinking, but rather his passion for gambling. Remember when Bruce Willis appeared on the show? Well, you should thank Perry for that, because the two were making the whole 9 yards, and they made a little bet together. Perry was adamant that the film would be #1 on the box office in its opening weekend, but Willis wasn't so sure. So if Willis lost, he'd have to appear as a guest on Friends and donate his earnings to charity. And we all know who won that one. What on-set woes befell Chandler's true love? Well, it turns out that actress Courtney Cox went through some difficult times as well. After celebrating her wedding to David Arquette, things became really difficult for her. Courtney was very excited about starting a family with her new husband and was looking forward to having kids. But what she wasn't expecting was the pain and anguish she'd have to go through with 7 miscarriages on her way to motherhood. It's hard to imagine how the actress or even anyone could survive all of that, especially when the series itself reminded her of pregnancy and difficulties with childbirth all the time. I remember one time I just had a miscarriage and Rachel was giving birth. It was like that same time. Oh my God, it was terrible having to be funny. Despite this horrible situation, Courtney kept trying, and just before her 40th birthday, right after Friends ended its 10-year run, she welcomed daughter Coco to the world. In an impressively dedicated and open decision, the actress shared her difficult journey to full-term pregnancy and birth on her docuseries 9 Months with Courtney Cox. Cox says that she believes that it's important to share these kind of things so people can know that they're not alone. Words don't suffice to describe how incredibly strong and determined Courtney has been. Finally, it's about time to tell you about the obstacles faced by one very charismatic Italian-American guy. Or maybe not so charismatic? Shockingly, it turns out that the rest of the cast wasn't all that amused by Joey's charm at the start of the series. In fact, they were mostly afraid of him. That's because of the news they'd heard about Matt LeBlanc before he joined the team. Namely, that before becoming famous, LeBlanc had been arrested not once but twice for driving under the influence. Aside from this, all the cast knew about the future star were minor facts like how he'd been raised by a mechanic and had done a stint as a male model. As a result, the cast really didn't know what to expect when Matt turned up on that first day. Aniston in particular recalled that she was really insecure about LeBlanc before she met him in person. I was scared of that type of guy. He thinks it's very funny now, and actually he can sit down and comfort me just like Courtney or Lisa could. The rest of the friends needed a bit more time to warm to what they thought was a bit of a bad boy. LeBlanc later confessed to the Daily Telegraph that these incidents happened when he was young and stupid. I wasn't driving fast, just crooked. The press never got hold of the mugshots. I was lucky. It's likely a relief to everyone that LeBlanc turned out to be a responsible and reliable friend in all senses, despite his rocky start. Matt later got so friendly with his co-stars that he once got too excited during a rehearsal with Matthew Perry and accidentally seriously injured himself. You probably remember that hilarious episode where no one was ready for Ross's fancy black tie benefit at the museum. In one of the scenes, Joey and Chandler get into a ridiculous fight over which one of Monica's chairs they get to sit on, and it ends up with both of them rushing to sit on the same one at the same time. While that might sound like a bit of silly slapstick, that fight actually ended up seriously injuring Matt LeBlanc. The actor later explained on Jimmy Kimmel that right when he and Matthew were both racing to the chair, Matt was gonna step over the coffee table and land on this big, huge, comfortable chair. But instead, he ended up completely upside down. He saw that he was going to land on his head between the table and the chair, so he put up his arm to break his fall, and ended up injuring his shoulder pretty badly. You might even remember how the injury was written into the show later, with Joey claiming to have hurt it by, jumping on the bed. Are there any other details that you'd love to hear about the lives of the stars of Friends? Maybe, where are they now? Don't be shy, share your requests with us below in the comments section. And as always, thanks for staying awesome.